Welcome to the Speak and Get What You Want podcast, where you learn to communicate like the world's most successful leaders. Now, here are your hosts, TK Stratton and Chad Kirby. Welcome to the Speak and Get What You Want podcast. I'm really excited for today's guest. I'm here with a dear friend and a phenomenal individual, Martine Melendez. Martine, great to be with you today.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. Love being here.
You know, Martine and I go back a lot of years, and there's a reason why he's on the podcast today, because Martine is one of those individuals who's really mastered the art of communication to be successful in every aspect of his life. Now, his story is unlike any you've ever perhaps heard. He came to America, was exceptionally successful in the financial services industry, and then he found himself going back to his home country in Venezuela so that he could immigrate properly and do the right way to get into America, and then found himself back here just a couple of years ago with literally nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing, just came from Venezuela with nothing to get back here to America. And Martine, you're again back in that successful seat again. So let me just start off by asking you this question. You have experienced perhaps some of the greatest roller coasters in life. I mean, you live in Utah now, where, there's plenty of affluence, and you've been in Venezuela for a lengthy period of time where there's both affluence and a lot of poverty as well. So how have you been able to maintain a successful mindset in the way you communicate to yourself and to others, even when you've been very successful financially and you've had nothing financially?
Well, one of the things that I would blame my mom for it. So I would give the credit to her. She told me stay hungry the whole, while I was growing up, stay hungry the whole time and never lose focus on what you want. So the time I went back to Venezuela was very unfortunate. I stayed there for 10 years, longer than I was expecting. And I had two choices to make. Two decisions, whether I stay down and adjust to the poverty in the country and just fail, or stay hungry and make something out of it. I went with the latter. And of course, having the wife, having the kids, having the reason stay hungry, of course, allows you to stay there and never lose focus on getting back, because that's what I always wanted for the family. That was the main reason I went back originally, is to make it back here in America the right way. We made it back. Now, when we made it back the second time, it's like you just said, nothing. So I had to start all over again. And I had two decisions to make. Whether I stay like that and blame the situation, blame the circumstances, or I just make something happen out of it, I went with the latter.
Well, and you know what's interesting, Martine, you say my mom taught me to stay hungry, but you have an incredible ability to connect with other people and make others feel good about themselves. And what I mean by that is we always teach that everyone's favorite subject is themselves, right? So you were in the depths of despair financially, coming to America with literally just the clothing on your back, and you were hungry, but you never made it about you. You were always about other people, which is then translated to tremendous success for you. But how have you been able to maintain that balance? How have you always been able to look outward instead of inward? Because it would be really easy to do given your circumstances.
Well, one of the things is building relationship has always gone long ways. The reason I made it back, Chad, is because I created great relationships, especially with very good friends. And you're never going to create those bonds and those relationships unless you connect with them. And you're never going to connect if you're only talking about yourself. Now, I created those relationships, long-term relationships, and I never knew I was going to go and reach out to them. And, I never did it with a specific purpose. But because I was able to do, when I reach out, they were there for me. Does it make sense? So you got to create the relationship, and you never will unless you give them, you make them feel good, and you make them feel that they want to be around you. And nobody wants to be around you when you only talk about yourselves.
Isn't that interesting? So the relationships you built actually were critical or pivotal in getting you back to America,
Yes.
but you never thought, "Oh, I'm gonna create this relationship so that I could one day leverage it to get back to America." You just worked on creating connection.
Yes, and that's one. If you ask me, one of my biggest strength, I would say, is that one, because it's not about what you take from people; it's what you give. You create friends, and of course, you take from people and you give and everything like that. But you cannot ever go into a relationship to get, but to give. So, what can I do for this relationship? And then life is a circle. I mean, one or another reason that will go back to you, and whenever you need it, you'll have a pool of resources out there. You know?
Okay, but Martine, you're sitting at the border trying to get back into America,
Yeah,
right? And then you get permitted to return to America and you have nothing. And yet you maintain that mindset of, okay, how can I give? How can I give? Martine, you had nothing financially
yeah.
speaking. Now, emotionally and family, you had everything, but you had nothing. So how do you maintain that giving mindset, making it all about other people when you yourself had very little? How did you maintain that mindset?
Well, some people are so poor that they only have money, and we've all heard that quote, right? So some people can give money, some people can give time, some people can give a friendship arm to be around it. Um, you train yourself to be like that, and I'm by all means, I'm not saying I'm the greatest at that, but one of the things is you and I were connected even through that process, when literally nothing but a backpack in order to come back to achieve dreams and everything. So can I give something physically or financially? I couldn't give anything back, but the moment is, if you stay hungry and you consider yourself to be able to give something in return, life will grant you that that you're looking for, whatever it is, because you're not thinking about taking, but in the whole process that you're growing, you're thinking about what can I give.
Wow, and so you're saying, Martine, that everyone always has something to give,
Always.
but but the problem is we always think about it from a financial standpoint,
Yes.
from a financial perspective. You know, that quote, "Some people are so poor they only have money." That's powerful because at the end of the day, people really truly care about connection. People care about relationships. And when we change our mindset and focus on really creating the real value of the relationship, which is connecting with the individual, then financially or money kind of goes by the wayside. Now, with that being said, you've been able to be very successful financially. So, is that something? I mean, I know your mindset is connecting with people, connecting with relationships. How do you balance, okay, but I still need money,
Yeah.
right? So I'm going to build these relationships, but I still need money. How are you able to balance that?
It's a great one, and I don't know. I have the smartest answer, but the thing is, you can do both at the same time. Balance doesn't exist, so you cannot do. Uh, you got to focus on it's time to build relationships and it's time to earn money. So when you build relationship, you know automatically that relationship will end, and you giving them something and them giving you something back. It always works like that. Now, that relationship might not give you money, but that relationship might give you a lead, a referral, a connection, that then it will lead to money. But if you only look at people like, okay, with him, I'm gonna get him as a client, or I'm gonna get him as a, okay, I want him as a client. They're gonna notice, they're gonna smell it, and they probably don't want to be with you anymore. But once you're authentic, once you're seriously thinking about themselves and you at the same time, then they will see, hey, Chad is a great person. Martine is a great person. I'm going to connect them. Hey, I want you to succeed. I want you to grow. Talk to my friend. I might not be your client right now, but my friend will. And that connection will, grow, and it will turn into what you were looking for.
Isn't that
It,
amazing?
it
So
is
you
great.
truly make it you make it all about other people.
Yes.
You make it all about other people. And I love that you share that, Martine, because to me, I look and really admire your hunger, your resilience, and all that you've done, both professionally and with your family. Here you are, just had child number three,
Yeah.
and your youngest at the time was 10, so that was a little bit of a curveball for you, you know but your ability to be resilient and stay hungry. And I think that's important reminder for all of us to really focus on other people. How do we create those relationships that build that connection, which will then propel you to even more success? And now I want to change gears just a little bit, but stay a little bit with the theme that we've been talking about. And that is, Martine, when you were leaving Venezuela this last time,
Okay.
and you were coming to America, and you were there not knowing if you were going to get permitted to come into the country or not. Okay. Now, a lot of the people listening to this podcast, Martine, are in high stress situations with work, with family, with leadership. There's a lot of stressful situations. Personally, I can't imagine one quite as stressful as having your family there at the border and you're trying to enter in legally to the country, because of the circumstances you were in Venezuela. So when you have your wife and your children looking to you, and they're looking to you, and inside your stomach may be in knots, you may be sick, you may whatever. How do you speak to yourself mentally so that you have the ability to lead out? Because a lot of people listening here are in leadership positions, or entrepreneurs, or they're leading people, and they may be concerned with the circumstances or situations that they may be in. How did you maintain the right mindset? What did you say to yourself in those dire
You're
circumstances?
going to be able to do it. You're going to be able to do it. You're going to be able to do it. You plan for it. You're going to be able to do it. Now, just to give one more piece of background here, I was I didn't know 100% I was going to be able to be permitted to come in, but I had to leave the country. By that time, I was already kidnapped twice. I was being persecuted. I've been threatened. It's time to go. So we had to. Now we arrange plans and everything in order to come in. And all I needed to do is knock on the door again and said, "Hey, I'm here. My kid was born here. My wife grew up here. I'm here. I want to do it. I want to do it right. And I graduated here. I come back again." During that process, a stressful process, two things remain in my mind. Number one, seeing my kids and my wife, and I needed to be there. So I couldn't broke down. So I had to keep it all inside because I need to show that I could do it because I planned for it. Now I cannot break down. But the other thing is, reality is human body breaks. You know, it was a time during those 2 weeks that I was doing everything in my power to come across and knock on the door of this country when I had to cry. And one opportunity, I cried alone. I cried, out of desperation because I didn't want to see them desperate. So I needed to give them strength. So I went to the bathroom. I cried, And then the other time, I called one of these friends and I cried with them and said, "Hey, I'm desperate." And magically, this friend said, "You're gonna be fine. You can do it," and automatically gives you strength to pull it back together and said, "Okay, let's go." So life it could be stressful. For me, it was an immigration process. For other people leading a team, it could be a deadline or a business to close or achievements to get, and you got to put it together. But you also have to remember you got to vent, because if not, you're gonna implode. So go out, cry all you need to do, reach out a friend that you can trust that will lift you up, and then after that, you're gonna be together in order to make it happen.
I love that. I love the two things you mentioned there just so clearly. Number one is your vision of your children and your wife, and you had this clear destination of where you were going and why you were doing it,
Yes.
right? And we know Simon Sinek teaches that so well. With what your why is can be really your driving force. And it's so interesting, Martine. So many people operate in this life just opportunistically, and they're just hoping everything turns out, and then they get to the border without a clear vision of why they're there and where they're headed, and then it compounds their challenges. And so having that clear vision. But then the second thing that you just talked on or said that also touches on what you spoke about before is the people that you surrounded yourself with. You reached out to one of those friends and connected with them.
Yes.
And because you had paid a price prior to building that connection, that was able to strengthen you during that difficult time. But I say two things, but I'm also going to add a third there real quick. Martine, you also said you broke down and cried.
Yes.
And I think it's important for everyone to note in this high achievement world that we live in, where everyone's driven, where everyone wants to be successful, there was a moment where you had to break down and cry. And that did not mean that you were a weak person, nor did it mean that you didn't have a clear vision of why you were doing what you were doing, but you just had to take a moment and go, whoa, this is heavy.
Yeah.
This is difficult. And I think if people would be more open and willing to just pause and go like, okay, I got to step back here for a second. This is intense. It would then after you cried, then what was your next step? Is that when you called that individual?
Yeah. So I cried. I cried. I let it all out, then put myself together and said, remember why you're doing it. Remember why and for whom you're doing it. And then I knew at that moment I couldn't do it by myself, and I couldn't share it with the family. Not because they were not going to support me. Of course they were going to support me. But remember, they're in this same stress situation and they're leaning on me. So I reach out to somebody else with whom I knew was going to be able to help me. And that person was like, I hear you. You're going to be fine. You have done much harder things than this. Keep going. And Chad, this is once again circling back to the beginning, creating relationships. I never thought I was going to reach out to this particular friend, whom, by the way, was with me the whole process, and said, hey, I'm desperate, I'm crying, I'm having a panic attack, I'm having anxiety, I don't know what to do. I never knew I was going to go through that. But because the relationship was there, because it was genuine, and because I love this friend loved me back, because I was, we had it. I was able to pick up the phone and said, I need you right now. Listen to me. And then he was like, you're going to be able to do it. And beautifully, it all happened.
So then, Martine, what would you say? And that's amazing. It's a phenomenal story. And then I'm sure once you went through that challenge of actually getting legally through the border, um, then you continue to reach out to friends and those relationships to help you get to where you are today. But my question is, what if somebody struggles creating connection? Like, how do you teach other people to create connections? What do you do? Because but there has to be a certain part of you that it comes natural for, or maybe you've just had to work at it.
I believe you're right. I mean, there are things that come naturally. To me, I can speak to everybody. But the other thing is, I believe that's like a muscle, and we
Mm,
have mentioned some principles in this call, and one of them is, when you try to make a connection, make it about them, not about you. When you reach
right.
out, and this friend, Chad, I've been at restaurants with you. I went to a ribs place in Rexburg once, and it was amazing to me. You're a master of this, because we went to the place, and you were talking to the guy and said, hey, how you doing? How was that prom dance last week? And these were high schoolers taking care of ribs. And I was like, how does Chad communicate with them? And even they are serving him. You're paying for a service, but you were asking them, hey, you knew he had a prom last week, and you asked him about it, and you asked him how he was feeling about that. You can learn how to create relationship, and the first step is not about you. You go out to them and you make it about them. You make them feel great, and you make them feel like, I love being around Chad. I love being around Martine. He always makes me feel so good about myself, I want to be with him more and more. And that's how you start creating that bond and relationships happen.
Oh, that is awesome. I love that. It's and I think it's important that you note too often when people are successful at something, people look at them and go, "Oh, well, it just must come naturally for them." But I love that you said, "You know what? It's like a muscle. I've had to work at it. It's not something that just came easy. It is something I worked at." The other thing you mentioned that I think is important to note is that watch other people that are good at connecting with others and go, "Wait, what did they do there? How did they do that?" And then follow their example. You know, the old adage that success leaves clues, right? And so people, those who are successful at connecting with other people, watch them and see what happens. So Martine, if I were to say to you, the one thing, the perhaps the biggest lesson, and maybe this is too hard to just, say the one biggest lesson, but what is one big takeaway from your journey, from this second journey from Venezuela to the United States, that has allowed you to then turn that into success in business?
Never lose focus.
Ooh,
During the
oh, that's
process, mathematically, Chad, mathematically, I was not supposed to achieve what I've been able to achieve, mathematically.
mm-hmm.
But if you never lose focus, then your actions will go around it, and you never forget why you started, and who's with you in the journey. Because they're also counting on you. Whether you're leading a team, whether you're leading a family, they're counting on you to make those decisions. And they sometimes will lose focus because they're going to get scared, they're going to get pressured, they're going to be stressed out. But you, the leader, the family, the father, the dad, if he remains focused and never lose track of it, you'll get there, because everything, you'll find ways to make it happen.
There's a I love that you share that. There was a leader by the name of Richard G. Scott who once said that distractions cause people to focus on good things so that there's no room for the essential. And I think about that as you were saying that many of us get caught up in good things that we lose focus on the essential
Yeah.
things. And so if we were to sit back, and I it's such a powerful lesson you're teaching, Martine, that don't lose focus. Never lose focus on those essential things. And if we were, unfortunately, all of us fall into this trap, Martine, that if you were to ask me, Chad, what are the most important things that you are to focus on today for you to be successful? I could easily articulate those things. However, if you followed it up with, hey, Chad, what have you spent time on today? That might be a little troubling, right?
Yes.
Because if we stay focused on what matters, then you can achieve Martine Melendez type success. Keep in mind, Martine, how long have you been in the States now?
I'm going into my fourth year next May. So 3 and 8 months, something like that.
And you are doing well. You've built and in the process of continuing to build a great business. And you're getting ready to move into a home and do, I mean, there's so many things that people would sit back and look at you and say, wow, you've been so lucky. And I'm not discounting your good fortune, but what you've taught us today, Martine, the importance of relationships and creating connection, and then the importance of maintaining and keeping focus, focusing on the right things. Those are powerful lessons for all of us to remember so that we can achieve the success at the level you have as we continue to move forward. So, Martine, love being with you.
Thank you.
Love your insights. Appreciate the person that you are. Um, Great being with you. Have a tremendous day, everyone.
Have a good one.